On December 26th, we talked about the death of the Soviet Union. Today, December 30th, marks its birth. On this day in 1922, the Treaty on the Creation of the USSR was approved. The death came 69 years later, but the seeds of that death were planted on this day in the founding logic itself. It was the official start of the greatest experiment in centralization in human history. Lenin, Stalin, and the Bolsheviks believed that a small group of experts in Moscow could run an economy better than millions of individuals making their own decisions. They created Gosplan, the State Planning Committee, and launched the 5-year plans. They believed that if they had enough data, enough power, and enough violence, they could engineer a utopia. They were wrong, and their error wasn't political, it was mathematical. It is called the economic calculation problem. Ludwig von Mises, the Austrian economist, predicted the Soviet collapse in 1920, 2 years before the USSR even officially existed. He said, "Without market prices, you cannot calculate value." In a free market, prices are signals. If the price of bread goes up, it tells farmers to grow more wheat and consumers to eat less bread. It is a decentralized nervous system. It coordinates the actions of billions of people without anyone being in charge. The Soviets abolished market prices and replaced them with quotas and administered prices. Produce 1 million shoes. So the factories produced 1 million shoes, but they were all size 9, and they were all left-footed. Why? Because that was the easiest way to meet the quota. There was no signal from the customer. There was no feedback loop. The result was shortage, waste, and famine. They had vast land and resources, and yet they repeatedly failed to feed their own people without rationing and imports. Centralization is blindness. Why does this matter in 2025? Because the Western elites are trying to rebuild the Soviet Union. They don't call it communism. They call it stakeholder capitalism. They call it the Great Reset. They call it AI governance. But the logic is identical. They believe that this time, with supercomputers, with artificial intelligence, with big data, central planning will finally work. They believe that an algorithm can determine the price of energy and the allocation of carbon credits better than the free market. They believe that a social credit system can measure the worth of a citizen better than voluntary exchange. This is the technocratic fallacy. They think the problem with the USSR was a lack of computing power. The problem was a lack of human agency. An economy is not a machine. It is a biological ecosystem. You cannot drive a forest. You cannot optimize a rainforest from a spreadsheet. We are seeing the centralization of everything in 2025. CBDCs can become the ultimate Soviet tool if designed with full programmability and control. Programmable money. The central bank decides what you can buy, where you can buy it, and when your money expires. If they decide inflation is too low, they can force you to spend by putting a negative interest rate on your digital wallet. If they decide you are eating too much meat, they can decline the transaction. It is the Gosplan on steroids, and it will fail. It will fail for the same reason the USSR failed. Centralized systems are fragile. If the center makes a mistake, everyone suffers. Decentralized systems are anti-fragile. If one node fails, the others adapt. Bitcoin is the anti-Soviet. It has no center. It has no CEO. It has no Politburo. It operates on pure math and decentralized consensus. That is why they hate it. It represents a system they cannot coerce. The lesson of December 30th is this: whenever a small group of men tries to play God with the economy, they create hell. They promise security, they deliver starvation. They promise equality, they deliver a hierarchy of party bosses and serfs. We are standing at a fork in the road. One path leads to centralization, digital ID, CBDC, 15-minute cities, carbon rationing, the high-tech Soviet Union. The other path leads to decentralization, Bitcoin, local food systems, parallel economies, mesh networks, sovereign individuals. Here is the architect's Decentralization Protocol for Q1 of 2026. First, decentralize your income. Do not rely on a single paycheck from a single employer in a single jurisdiction. By March, have at least one additional income stream: freelance work, a side business, a skill you can sell directly. Second, decentralize your banking. Do not store your entire financial life in one institution. Have accounts at 2 different banks minimum, plus at least one asset outside the banking system entirely: cash, gold, Bitcoin. Third, decentralize your survival. Take at least one step towards self-sufficiency in food, energy, or shelter: a garden, a generator, a water filter, a network of people who would share resources in a crisis. And have at least one jurisdictional escape route, a visa option, a second language, or a trusted network abroad. The Soviet Union lasted 69 years. It was a blip. The laws of economics are eternal. Centralization collapses under its own weight. The technocrats in Washington and Brussels are building a Tower of Babel. Let them build it. You build the lifeboat. I am the architect, and I will see you tomorrow.